Hey everyone, Alex here with Nerds at Odds, and today we are going to be discussing my Star Wars films ranked. We're going to start with worst, and then we're going to go to best, and we're only discussing the live-action movies that came to theaters, so there's 11 of them. And I have these tiered into 5 different segments. I have the perfect segment, the great segment, the good, fine, okay segment, the watch once segment, and the don't watch segment. Now, at number 11, at the bottom of the list, a movie I think you should not watch is The Rise of Skywalker. And while there are parts in this movie that I think are more true to Star Wars than some of the other films that I'm going to discuss, this movie feels the worst made. It is very rushed. There are a bunch of incomprehensible scenes and half-baked thoughts. And it's hard to tell who, what, when, where, why. In any scene you're in, you can barely answer one or two of those questions for me, when in a good movie, you'd be able to answer the majority or all of those questions. So I feel like it's rushed. It did a horrible job of landing this ship. I mean, a crash landing with no survivors would probably be a more successful landing than The Rise of Skywalker is. And I feel like it is very disappointing, and I don't know what else to say about that, but it's at number 11. It's don't watch. Number 10, I think the film that is the cause of Rise of Skywalker being at 11 is The Last Jedi. And maybe more The Last Jedi's fault than The Rise of Skywalker itself for being at number 11. But I feel like you could have done some things better in The Rise of Skywalker regardless of The Last Jedi. That's why Rise of Skywalker is at number 11. Number 10, The Last Jedi. I feel like no one could ever convince me that Rian Johnson is a Star Wars fan and that he understood these characters, because they did the unforgivable crime of ruining Luke Skywalker, who Star Wars fans and those who see these movies as something more than entertainment, like myself, I am a fan of these movies for the religious teachings that the Jedi give. That's why I watch these films. That's what interests me the most. And what you did to Luke, who was the savior of the Jedi in Episode 6, and he's this mythical being, this figure that's resurrected this ancient religion that I feel so connected to, and I say the mantras that Yoda teaches, and I try to live by that, and I hope to pass down those teachings to my children. Like, that's what that means to me. That's how much the Jedi Order and Yoda's teachings and Obi-Wan's teachings and what Luke could have been, that's what it means to me. And just seeing you throw Luke's character away like that is very upsetting, and it shows me that Rian Johnson does not understand what it means to be a Star Wars film or what it means to be a Jedi. And besides that, there are a bunch of other points that make no sense. It shows, you can tell Rian Johnson just did not know where this trilogy was going and didn't bother to care, really. The killing of Snoke, the making Hux just worthless, ruining Luke, not killing off Leia, Rey doesn't get trained. Just there's so many missteps in Last Jedi that it's a better made film than Rise of Skywalker, but it is a worse Star Wars film. So it's at number 10, though I could definitely see you putting it at number 11. You also don't watch this film. Now at number 9, a film that is just kind of forgettable and dumb is Solo: A Star Wars Story. This is still in my don't watch tier, because Solo does so many things that are just dumb. Like, the way Han Solo gets his last name is dumb. How he meets Chewie is not how it was supposed to go, especially if you're a fan of the old lore. The Kessel Run is dumb. Like, you try to answer so many questions people don't have. Like, the Kessel Run, when he says he does it in this amount of parsecs, and parsecs is a measurement of distance and not time. It doesn't matter that Han Solo, misquotes what a parsec is. In my mind, he's just lying to Obi-Wan. and the character doesn't know what a parsec is, and he's lying to Obi-Wan to try to sound impressive. And Obi-Wan knows, he's just full of crap, but Han Solo's just trying to lie to him. He's like, oh, I did it in 12 parsecs, and Obi-Wan's like, a parsec's a measurement of distance, but Han's just trying to, bolster. That was a good enough explanation. We didn't need to see this crappy chase scene through this, dumb CGI monster and all of that. I hated that. I hate this infatuation on the dice, which started with Last Jedi. No one cared about the dice. These characters don't care about the dice. You're just forcing them in there. And then the fact that it bombed at the box office and will not be getting sequels means that if you watch Solo and then you watch Episode 4, the Han Solo you end with at the end of Solo is in no way, shape, or form the person you meet in Episode 4. So you're better off just going from Episode 3 to Episode 4 when it comes to Han Solo's character. You have more questions that need answered at the end of Solo than you had before the movie. And since it's not going to be fleshed out anymore, it is better to just watch Episode 4 as the first time you see Solo. So that's why Solo: A Star Wars Story is a movie that you should not watch either. Then lastly, in the do not watch column at number 8, I have The Force Awakens with an asterisk, because I need y'all to understand that in 2015 when The Force Awakens came out, it would have been my second favorite Star Wars movie. I had it ranked number 2 up until I saw Rise of Skywalker and saw that this trilogy was just forfeit. Episodes 7, 8, and 9 are just a waste of time to watch. They were not planned out well. They have nothing to do with Star Wars, in my opinion. There's no teachings of the Jedi. They destroyed the original trilogy characters, and it's very upsetting to see how carelessly this beloved franchise was handled. So, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, was my second favorite Star Wars film when it came out because it's a fun, safe movie that introduces you back into the world of Star Wars. If you like the prequels like I do, because I grew up with them and I think they're good films, not well made, but they're still Star Wars. They have the essence of Star Wars in them, something that the sequel trilogy does not have. And if you're a fan of the prequels, you can watch Episode 7 and be like, okay, this is fun Star Wars, this is true to the characters. Han Solo feels like himself in this movie. And if you're a fan of the original trilogy, you can watch it and be like, okay, this reminds me of the original trilogy. I'm all in. So Episode 7 was a safe movie, but it's a fun movie that introduces a lot of cool ideas. Finn is he left the stormtroopers. He's a deserted stormtrooper, turncoat, and all that. Rey is this nobody with these incredible powers. Kylo Ren leads the Knights of Ren, and he worships Darth Vader, who are the Knights of Ren. How did Maz Kanata get this lightsaber? If these were ideas that were fleshed out over a trilogy entirely created by J.J. Abrams, it would have been much better, because all the dumb things that happened in 8 and 9, I guarantee you were not planned when they were doing 7. So, for that reason, it would have been number 2 on my list. But now that the trilogy 8 and 9 have destroyed what 7 could have been, it is dragged down into the do not watch tier as well. And I just want to say one thing about The Mandalorian, which we will be having a spoiler discussion of Season 2 in the coming weeks on the podcast. That if they bring up anything to do with the sequel trilogy, The Mandalorian show as a whole for me is just wasted. But right now it seems like they're going with George Lucas's idea of what would have happened in 7, 8, and 9, where the New Republic is reigning, and there are, in the outer skirts of the galaxy, there are these, ex-Empire warlords or chieftains that are holding on to their section of the galaxy. And you see that, Moff Gideon is not reigning over several planets. He just has, his own section, He's not reigning over several galaxies. He's reigning over, his own section. And there was the one with Ahsoka Tano in the episode where that one ex-Empire person had this singular base on a planet. And that's kind of how George Lucas was going to have it, where the Empire was just in remnants, and powerful warlords that used to be Empire rose up throughout the galaxy. And I like how that's going, but it seems like they're going to do a plot line that ties into the sequel trilogy, which if they do, then the whole show is just a waste for me. So I hope that's not where they're going. But back onto the Let's Rank. At number 7, the only movie in my watch once category is Rogue One. And the first time you see Rogue One, it's an interesting ride. You get to know these characters. You get to see why the Death Star has this flaw in it, which is a good answer to a question. One of the very few we got from Disney. It's like, why is the Death Star so easy to blow up? It's because of the events that happened in Rogue One. The guy hated the Empire, but was being forced to build it, so he built this flaw in it. I understand that. That's cool. The last 5 minutes with Darth Vader wrecking shop on that ship is also very cool to see. But the only times I've seen this film, I've seen it all the way through once, and I've tried to watch it a couple times, and then I get bored and turn it off, because none of this matters after you've seen it once. Is the scene with Darth Vader at the end where he just kills those people on that ship. I watched that on YouTube, and that's all I need from this movie, because you get the answer about the Death Star, you see the characters die, and you're like, well, there's nothing else I need from this film. It teaches you nothing, like the 6 Star Wars films did before Disney got a hold of it. Those 6 films teach you something if you're paying attention. So, Rogue One is in the watch once category. Now for the next 3 films, which are in my like okay, fine, good category, and that really depends on your taste, but I feel like it's hard if you are a Star Wars fan who enjoys it for the teachings of the Force like I do, then you have to watch all these films because they have good teachings in them. And number 6 is Attack of the Clones. I feel like Attack of the Clones has bad CGI and bad dialogue and bad acting. It has the worst of all of those out of the prequel trilogy. It has the worst CGI, the worst dialogue, the worst acting out of all of it. And I feel that weighs it down a lot. But there are still some great scenes in Attack of the Clones. Anything with Obi-Wan in it's great. I like Count Dooku. I think the battle on Geonosis is cool. Jango Fett is cool. It's fine that Boba's a clone. He's still his son. It doesn't matter, really, that he's a clone. And there's a bunch of cool scenes on Attack of the Clones. I like how Yoda fights, too. You see Anakin kill the Tusken Raiders, which is a cool scene, seeing him turn bad. The dialogue he delivers about killing the women and the children, too, is kind of weird. Not delivered great, but I still think the ideas are there. They're just not executed greatly. But it still builds on the world of Star Wars, and it feels like a Star Wars film because you get Yoda teaching Anakin about the Force, and you get these Jedi, and there's these huge fights, and it's just a much more... You can see the through line for the prequels that's not there for the sequel trilogy. So Attack of the Clones, number 6. Number 5 is The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace has bad CGI, but they still kind of did practical effects. Some, which makes it a little better than Attack of the Clones looking. Hasn't aged as poorly. I think Phantom Menace has a lot going for it. It has the pod racing scene, which I do like. It has Darth Maul, who is awesome. It has Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, who are both great. It has the best song in all of Star Wars, Duel of the Fates. There's a lot going for Phantom Menace. The political stuff is boring. I understand how people can find it boring. Even as a kid, I thought it was fun to watch. That's just me, I guess. But I like The Phantom Menace. It's the film I've seen the most of the Star Wars films, and I think that might just be it coming out when I was a child. Next, at number 4, is New Hope. I feel like New Hope is hurt a little bit by its age. It is starting to age where it's a bit slower than I would like. It's a little less actiony than I would like. There are some teachings of the Jedi. Though Obi-Wan just teaches Luke a little bit. You get a lot more in Empire Strikes Back. But for Episode 4, there's a little bit of the teachings of the Jedi. And the effects are kind of waning. And I feel like it's aging a bit, but it's still a great film. I put it at good because it's a bit slow for my taste now. But it is still, you have to watch A New Hope. It's still, one of the great... I just threw my pen, if anyone heard that. It's one of the great films. Next, at number 3, and the first of the 2 films in the great category for me, even though I said great a lot while talking about A New Hope, I feel like these 2 films stand out above New Hope enough to get in their own category. Number 3 is Return of the Jedi. And I've said this many times, but I feel like the first hour or so of Return of the Jedi, when they are on Tatooine, and they're doing the whole thing with Jabba. That is the best Star Wars film. Seeing Luke show up and the escape plan and the fight over the Sarlacc pit, that is the best Star Wars film, in my opinion. If they could have kept that pace up, Return of the Jedi would be the best film. But then they go to Endor with the Ewoks, and I feel like the Ewoks really hurt the movie, because it's just a bit too goofy, and how these little teddy bears killing these, elite group of stormtroopers. But then you get the throne room scene intertwined there with the Ewok stuff, which is great. The throne room scene's awesome. And you see Luke finally become a Jedi. Luke is not a Jedi in this film until the very end, because he completes his Jedi training when he throws his lightsaber down and tells the Emperor, "I will not kill my father. I am a Jedi like my father before me." And he refuses to give in to the anger and the hate. And even though Darth Vader has done these horrible things, Luke cannot bring himself to kill him, and he forgives him. And that's the way of the Jedi. You don't kill those who are unarmed. And Darth Vader at that point is beaten. Luke shouldn't kill him. He does the thing that Anakin doesn't do in Episode 3. Anakin kills Count Dooku after Count Dooku has been beaten. But Luke doesn't kill Vader. And Luke tosses his lightsaber aside. And he's a Jedi at that point. And that's an awesome scene, but then you go back to the Ewoks and the ridiculousness they bring to the film. And that hurts it enough to put it at number 3 for me. Number 2... And I feel like this movie is getting a lot more love now as it ages, especially since we've seen what has come after it, theatrically for Star Wars. Revenge of the Sith is number 2. Revenge of the Sith, its visual effects stand up. They haven't aged poorly. The opening scene with the battle over Coruscant, where Obi-Wan and Anakin are trying to save the Chancellor, is great. It's a great opening scene. I love Anakin and Obi-Wan in this film. Their dynamic is much better at the beginning, and it's something that you get more of in the Clone Wars TV show. I like General Grievous. Him being like a Jedi hunter who collects the lightsabers is cool, and I do think he fights pretty cool. And you see Anakin turn to the dark side, starting with killing of Dooku, and then slaughtering the younglings and killing off the Separatists and all that. This movie has a bunch of awesome fight scenes. Mace Windu and Palpatine, Obi-Wan and Grievous, Obi-Wan and Anakin, Yoda and Palpatine. There's a bunch of cool fight scenes, and it's the conclusion of the story. You see how Anakin's fear led to anger, which led to hate, which led to suffering. It's what Yoda was trying to tell him in Phantom Menace, and that's one of the key teachings of the Jedi. And you see it play out where he fears losing Padme, and that fear makes him angry at Obi-Wan, who he feels like is not teaching him enough, which leads him to hate the Jedi, and which leads him to suffering, and the suffering is losing Padme and being, cut down and burned and turned into Darth Vader. It's the full circle of that teaching, and it really shows you why you should learn how to let go of all of that which you fear to lose, which is another Yoda teaching. And I think those are beautiful teachings, and Revenge of the Sith shows you why you should do it, because that's something that, you're not going to get in a lightsaber duel with your teacher over lava fields on Mustafar, but if you're afraid of losing someone, you might be willing to do anything to save them, and by doing that you end up hurting yourself and them more. And acceptance is a key stage. So there's a bunch of teachings there, and that's something the prequels do, is they give you a lot of teaching. And now at number 1, which I think is a perfect film, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars film. I think it's everybody's favorite Star Wars film, pretty much. It's highly regarded as one of the best films ever made, probably top 10, if not top 5 best films ever made. And for me, I feel like The Empire Strikes Back gives you the first introduction to true Jedi wisdom from Yoda. He's telling you, do or do not, there is no try, because in the end, either you did or did not accomplish a task. And, judge me by my size, do you? He's so entwined and connected with the Force that it doesn't matter. He's not this big hulking guy. He can do these amazing things through the Force, and, illuminous beings are we, not this crude matter. And he's teaching Luke all these things that are key tenets of Jediism. And that's my favorite part, is watching Yoda teach Luke about it. But there's also one other thing that Empire Strikes Back does that I feel like, I'm going to talk about the sequel trilogy again real quick, that they fail to understand, is that Rey in the sequel trilogy is pretty much the Luke character, basically. They grew up on a sand farm, don't know the parents, want to do something greater. She's basically Luke. But yet she's great already when they find her. She's able to do all these amazing things from the get-go without any training. They never train her. The excuse they use in Episode 9 with Leia training her is pretty bad because, like I said in my video about Episode 9, Leia is not a Jedi. She gave up on her training. And Rey is not training like a Jedi. She gets upset and then beats that thing with a stick. That's not how you do it. You know, you can't let your emotions control you like that. And Luke trains underneath Yoda and Obi-Wan, the greatest Jedi masters we've ever seen in canon. And Luke trains under these people. And he goes and faces Darth Vader in Episode 5. And he loses Steel. And that's that's a brilliant moment, and that's something that the sequel trilogy needed. They needed Rey to lose at some point, and they never did. And Luke achieves so much more than Rey does in the films. He trains under Yoda. He learns what it means to be a Jedi. And he goes and faces Vader, and Vader toys with him and just beats him down. He cuts off his arm, leaves him for dead. If he didn't join Vader, he was going to die, so Luke just jumps off of Bespin. And it's a great way to end a movie, because you have no clue what's happening in the next movie, but you really want to know. You have to see how your heroes overcome this. And it's beautifully done. Every part of the movie is great. And it's my favorite one, especially because you get so much teaching of the Jedi in it. And like I said, that's where I come. That's why I go to Star Wars 4. So, a quick breakdown. 11, Rise of Skywalker. 10, Last Jedi. Solo at number 9. 8, The Force Awakens. All of those don't watch. 7, Rogue One. Watch once. 6, Attack of the Clones. 5, Phantom Menace. 4, New Hope. Those are fine, good, or okay films. Depending on your leaning, I think they're all good movies. 3 is Return of the Jedi. 2, Revenge of the Sith. Both of those are great movies. Number 1, The Empire Strikes Back, I think is a perfect film. So thank y'all for watching this. And remember, if you want to get our content early, ad-free, with the ability to submit your questions, comments, or concerns, access to our Discord, shout-outs at the end of every video, head on over to patreon.com/nerdsatodds, and I'll see you guys on the next video.